Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit, and always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hey everyone, happy January. Believe it or not, we made it to 2024 despite the craziness of the last couple of years. So just want to thank my sponsors for making these podcasts possible. Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com. Great shakes. They helped me get through the holidays, helped some of my family and friends and tons of my patients get through. If you're struggling with not being able to put on weight, if you're one of those rare people in the world, we're using it to help put muscle mass on people. And also for people who are going through surgery, can't eat, this is the healthiest thing you can do to stay nutritionally sound. Also, they have a 20-year shelf life on some metal packs that they're doing for us, those of us who think the economy is going to go crazy and we have to have an emergency kit just in case. So Health Code, they have the vanilla chocolate macadamia. You can make tons of recipes from it, and it is nutritionally sound. I'm recommending it a lot to my seniors who are struggling with memory issues and trying to get them on a low carb ketogenic diet and have sound nutrition. So that's my plug. I love these guys. They're a great company, great people, and they even have a vegan option now for people who are choosing that path of eating. So please get health. And also Keto Mojo, I've been using them a lot. I was away from home and did not bring my Keto Mojo, and I was bummed because I did a couple of longer fasts and changed my diet a little bit, and I wanted to see the results. And guess what? This guy who's sponsored by Keto Mojo left it at home. So I will be grabbing it as soon as I get back home, and we'll be checking my ketones. They're a great company, a lot of great resources there, to get back on track after the holidays. So Keto Mojo, keto-mojo.com. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode, and thank you for your continued support. Here's to 2024, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. This is one of my first ones I've done because friends of mine on Twitter said, hey, you got to interview Mimi. Get Mimi on there. So Mimi Morgan, welcome.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you having me, Brian.
Oh, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for taking the time to do this. And I want people to hear your story because there's a lot of people in the situation that you were in when you first started your journey. So tell us about, let's go all the way back to childhood. I mean, did you struggle with weight and health problems when you were growing up? Or were you pretty healthy? And then what happened?
Actually, I was very sick as a child. I had developed asthma at about 2 years of age. I grew up in New Jersey, in northern part in the country. And about 2 years of age, I developed asthma and was quite ill with it. And back then, the treatment was a lot of bed rest. Medication was nothing like what it is now. And so I was actually exempt from PE all the way through 6th grade. And growing up in the country, I loved spending time outside, but I missed a lot of school and was quite sick with it. Then we moved one town away, and I was at a girlfriend's house, discovered horses, fell in love with them, and I ended up convincing my father to get me a horse. And so after 6 months taking care of our neighbor's horses, he bought me a horse. And coincidentally, I seemed to improve. And, I was originally told I had all these allergies, could be around horses, dogs. And all of a sudden now I'm getting exercise and my health's improving. and ended up still have asthma to this day, and still when I get sick I'll take medication, but I worked myself out of it, of asthma, and then at high school was able to do PE, and I showed competitively and was quite a successful nationally ranked equestrian. So that's pretty interesting that flipped around. I grew up, I was slim most of my life, except for about a year or so. It took me a bit to get my weight off with pregnancy, and then when I got ill a number of years ago. So I've basically been slim and active, and came from a home with good eaters. So we grew up with, the deer in the freezer, the beef and the hog, and the root cellar with the bacon hanging, and grew up with that. I did have fertility problems. I have three daughters. Two were adopted, and they it was one of the first 7-hour surgeries at the University of Pennsylvania, and they said, "I'm sorry, it didn't work. You're not going to have children." But after adopting the second child, I ended up getting pregnant with my third daughter.
Wow. And I've heard
So,
that story. I've had people
yeah,
adopt it. One of my friends adopted 3 kids and then boom, they get pregnant. They said, couldn't happen.
yeah,
It happens, right?
yeah, I
Maybe
know.
you lose a little bit of stress at trying to conceive and then it just
Yeah,
happens.
I think so. There's a big part of my story is in a lot of ways, but there's really something to be said about letting go. And after two daughters, I had my family, and boom, 6 months later, I'm pregnant. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, it's really interesting. So basically, I was healthy except for when I would get sick. I was prone to bronchial infections, some pneumonia, and then that meant that the asthma would flare up. But basically healthy through my adult period of life. I'm adventuresome, so I used to do adventurous travel once a year. So I've done dog sledding, horse packing, did backpacking 10 days up in the Beartooth Wilderness Mountains in Montana, and I was in my 40s then. About mid-50s, I started weight training and did that a lot. Picked up biking, bike 125 miles a week. Actually did bike 300 miles in Ireland with a friend. We carried our own gear. I trained for that for 6 months. And was riding then, rode 4 or 5 times a week. And so it was pretty active. And then I
Your diet
moved
at
to
that time was just a standard American diet, basically.
It was. Now,
Yeah.
I will say, actually, to back up, I'm glad you asked that. Uh, I did I did go macrobiotic and vegan, and that really was more that I'm driving up to the barn to ride, and I'm seeing all the cattle truck, and I never was a big meat eater, and I just decided and started doing research, and everybody was into plant-based and being vegan, and I decided, I was going to do that. So I did that for probably about 10 years, which did do, and I was fine with it. And then one Thanksgiving, I thought, boy, that turkey smells good, and ended up having a little turkey. But I've always been very low, even though I was a good eater and didn't eat a lot of junk, and that was to my benefit. I was always, and I was slim. I always was low fat, definitely. So
And
um,
when you're saying vegan, were you eating eggs or you were
no,
plants?
actually, I actually started eating eggs a year ago, and my last eggs were when I was probably 7 or 8. It was a battleground between me and my mother. So no, I didn't eat eggs for 50 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and
And so
dairy
those
was
10
never,
years you were vegan, like
yeah.
mental wise, you were okay, mood wise, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff
mood
stable.
wise, I was okay. I was
Cool.
stable.
That's
I
good
was
to hear.
fine.
I'm glad to hear
You
that.
know, oh yeah, but it ended up having its effect on me. I'm pretty strong, and I'm a pretty rock solid person. So I think I probably got away with it longer than most, and then the fact that I was active. So let's see, where were we? So I was that. Then back in about 2000, I started eating meat again. Not a big beef eater, but definitely started eating meat again, and that was in my diet. And then I was busy working, was really stressed working. I was a traditional stay-at-home mom, but when my youngest went off to college, I ended up discovering I was creative and could paint and ended up having a career as a dinnerware designer, and licensed my designs to a number of companies. I worked a lot of hours, was not sleeping, was going through menopause, a lot of stress. And I think then everything started to catch up and take its toll on me.
And what happened then? I mean, you're fit, active, you're doing all the right stuff, no
Yeah.
stress, all those kind of things. Then what started happening health wise?
It was back about in 2013. So while I was working, I gave up what was doing well for me. And that was I gave up weight training because I was too busy working. I had moved to Charleston. Originally, I lived in Atlanta. When I was married, moved to Charleston in 2000. It's pretty dangerous here biking, and I was a pretty good biker. Gave up biking and busy working, so walking the dogs 1 or 2 miles, but it wasn't that exercise I was getting before. I started neglecting my health, and then I was walking my dog one day and I tripped, fell. It was a bad fall. I broke my wrist. Had to have surgery, have a plate put in. I'm pretty tiny, and so end up rubbing, and a year later they took out the plate and screws. And I also had soft tissue surgery then because my wrist wasn't stable. I had that a year later after the break, and was in a cast, couldn't bend my arm for about 3 months while that healed. And then they took that off, and about a month or two later, I started to notice nodules. And this to me is so I was already set up for a lot of things going wrong, already very low fat, not eating a ton of protein. And this to me was the catalyst, my fall and my break, because after the second surgery, a few months after that, I developed Dupuytren's nodules on my right hand, where the fracture had been. And I go to the doctors, and they say, "Well, we can't do anything until your hand claws up." And I said, "Well, that's not an answer." So I found a treatment and had radiation on it, which destroyed the nodules. And the radiologist who I found, and I had to go through a lot of work to find somebody because nobody wanted to do it. It was a treatment in Germany and wasn't quite catching here. Um, at this point, then I started to ache. I started trouble when I get up. I couldn't stand on my feet. And I'm in the office with her, and she real hands-on radiologist, and we hit it off, and we're talking, and she sees me moving. She said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, it just hurts on my feet." She sat down and looked at me. She said, "You need to go see a rheumatologist." So she made a personal phone call, got me in with a rheumatologist in 6 weeks, and then I was diagnosed. This was 2015, diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And we're doing the typical course of prednisone. We're doing the hydroxychloroquine, or known as Plaquenil, the methotrexate. That's not working. Then they're putting me on a biologic. I'm not going to name which one,
I'm
but
okay with that.
yeah, okay. I'm allergic to it now. So they put me on that, and it didn't work. And before it didn't work, my daughters noticed me staring out into space. I was decorating cupcakes with the letter L, and I couldn't remember how to do an L. And I'm not telling anybody this is happening. I'm thinking I'm getting dementia. And then I walk up the street that I've walked a million times, 2 blocks from work, and I had to cross the street because they were doing work. And I look up, and I'm thinking, what city am I in, and how did I get here? And I stood there on the sidewalks for a couple of minutes, just absolutely panicked. I just didn't know where I was. And so then I spoke up and said, "This is what's happening." And they originally thought it was I was having seizures. Decided that wasn't it because there was too many. I also was having hallucinations. The medication I was on was not working. Took me off. Seen a bunch of doctors who are like, we think you're okay. If next time you have a seizure, give us a call. And so then I got put on another biologic, and I just happened to mention to my rheumatoid arthritis, "How are you doing?" And I told her. She said, "Oh, I wish I would have known that. That's actually a really small side effect of one of the biologics that I was on. That's really rare that can happen." Anyway, a few months later, my daughter started notice masking on my face, and I was having trouble swinging my arm, and a couple other symptoms were happening. I'd get up from a chair, and I was having delayed movement. Also cognitively, I was having. I always make Thanksgiving. I can do everything without looking at recipes. I work smooth like clockwork. And all of a sudden now I can't do that well. I'm having trouble with numbers holding in my head. And a series of things. Sleep was becoming an issue.
What's
And
the time period of this over when you first started
uh,
noticing like making the
the
L to
neuro,
now you're
oh,
having.
the L. So that was about, this is my grandson's birthday's in May. So I'm noticing all of that about 5 months, 6 months after that. And I'm starting to notice some things, and
So this
I
is a
wonder,
rapid
wonder
decline where you're starting to notice like, oh, something's wrong for
Yes, I
sure.
am.
Yeah.
I am. And at this point, I'm thinking, maybe I have Parkinson's. I don't know. It just was, I just, well, so I got in with a movement disorder specialist, and I was having balance. I was falling, and something was just off with me. And I got in finally in December so this would be 2017, so 2 years after diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I got in with a movement disorder specialist, one of the top centers in the U.S. And um, my official diagnosis was Parkinsonism, which is it's an umbrella for your listeners. That covers a whole lot of diseases in that family, and but they weren't quite sure because some of them seemed to be a little bit more rapid than what would be typical. Went a couple times. They put me on carbidopa, levodopa right away, and I had definitely some improvement. And when you take that medication, it competes with protein. And when it competes with protein, it loses out, and the medicine isn't effective. So now they're like, we want you on a low protein, high carb diet, not the low carb, high carb diet. And so now I'm getting less protein. I'm still not getting the fat because I'm not eating it anyway. It also can make you very nauseous, which it did me. So I'm eating more graham crackers and than I can manage, and saltines, and then a banana, which is high in sugar. And that's pretty much my diet. And then I try to get a little bit of protein at night. And started to develop some autonomic symptoms. I'm getting worse. They're having up my medication. And my daughter takes me to two other the top centers in the U.S. They all concurred, except for the last one, which is the one that I was treated for. They said, we think you're a multiple system atrophy suspect. And that stays on for about 5 years until the symptoms sort of appear, and you've got about another 3 to 5 years to live after that. But they're like, there's some things that just aren't right. So we're not sure if it's typical Parkinson's, and we're putting you. So that was the specialist that I saw that in that. And I did rock steady boxing. So exercise is the best thing for Parkinson's. I did rock steady boxing. Had another doctor on my
And
team.
cycling too is another
Well,
thing
no,
with,
it is actually. There's
but
a
you
whole
couldn't do it there
interest.
because it was too dangerous.
It was, and at this point, actually, my health is too bad. I had to quit work.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to quit my job, which was really hard, and not that I wasn't, not that I just wasn't ready to retire, and I didn't like having to give up a part of myself. And I'm walking with a cane because my balance is really off. Uh, and then let's see. So I did the boxing. I did that. I didn't take the diagnosis on top of everything really well. I wasn't depressed, but wasn't feeling good. I was losing a little bit of that fight.
Yeah, you kind of lose hope, and you think it's like I've seen people with supranuclear palsy, and they just have a rapid decline mental functioning, and you think, uh-oh, I used to be doing all these things. You want to adventure stuff, and now you're like, what am I going to do now, going forward? And then there were
Yeah.
probably concerns about your family and are going to have to take care of you
Yes.
soon.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And it chips away, Parkinson's is slower, but it chips away at who you are. Your world becomes smaller. But I quit work. I did work part-time, about 5 days a month. So it was a little bit of something. And, I really tried to get back to, and so I started walking the 2 miles, and it was like, okay, I got to kind of turn this around. Got like a little flash of hope. And it was a February, and I'm sitting on them. I've got I kind of laugh now, um, but I had my lentil meatballs in the oven, and I'm not using canned lentils. I'm making my own lentils. I have them in the oven. It was a pretty day, and I thought, I'm going to sit on the bench and get some sun while they're in the oven getting ready for dinner. And it was February 7th, 5 years. And I go to get up, and I'm a little dizzy, and I had a little trouble with low blood pressure. So I thought, well, maybe that's it. I got up too quick, and I sat down again, go to get up, and I just couldn't find ground. And I was at a little park, I was in a townhouse right across the street. And interesting, there were a couple guys, and it was a quiet park, so there was nobody around. Two guys happened to be tying their shoes, getting ready to run. And I could see him out of the corner of my eye because I'm kind of slumping over a little bit now. And I just said, "Excuse me." They came over. I originally should back up, tried to call for my daughter and son-in-law, and I didn't get an answer for one, and I couldn't dial for the other. And then I was like, "Oh, I'm in trouble." And that's when I called them. And I asked them to take, because I'm a little bit stubborn. I don't like a lot of help. And I'm thinking I dismiss things a little bit. So I said, I live right over there. Will you just walk me to my door, please, and carry my things? And I think I have Parkinson's. I think I have low blood pressure, and I'll be okay. Let me just sit, and I'll get my medicine. And they go to walk me. They said, sure. And they go to walk me, and so I'm having a little trouble. And they said, we're going to call 911. I said, no, I'm okay. Take a couple other steps, and it was just not going to happen. And they sit me down on the next bench, and they're called 911. And then all of a sudden it hit me, and I said, stroke. I knew I was having a stroke. And I slumped over, and I don't remember anything until I woke up in the ambulance. But I couldn't speak. It was my left side again, my Parkinson dominant side. And my hand clawed up, couldn't move my leg, couldn't speak. And I got rushed to the stroke clinic. And, it's interesting because I was thinking, oh, how miserable life is. And then this hits me. And,
Yeah.
it's just kind of a real eye opener. But I got TPA. It was a medium-sized stroke. I got TPA within probably 30 minutes. It was pretty quick. Was in for 3 days. They let me out. I had a really bad headache when I was in there, and I was really cold, which is unusual for me, like a screaming headache, and I never have headaches. But I was fine. Actually, the head of the stroke clinic was my physician. She assured I would be fine. Came through the stroke pretty well. And my daughter and son-in-law picked me up about 8 o'clock on a Sunday night to take me home. Well, I wanted to go home. They said, no, you're going to stay with us. We want to watch you. And 24 hours later, and I wasn't feeling good, I rested. 24 hours later, my daughter comes in the room. I had taken a long nap, and she comes in and said, wanted to know if I wanted dinner. And I said, I'm not hungry, but I need to use the restroom. Will you just walk with me? Something's not right. I'm not feeling good. And I didn't get to the end of the bed, and I passed out. Luckily, she caught me because I went on my back. And the ambulance came. They weren't sure what was the matter. Sent me for an MRI because I'm screaming about my back. I was in such agony. And so I had an MRI. They were testing everything. And at this point now, I'm on morphine's not doing anything. And apparently somewhere in the mix, they started giving me Dilaudid. And I'm probably saying that wrong.
Oh, you got it dilaudid. Yep.
Yeah. So they gave me that. And about 2 days later, I woke up to hear apparently in the middle of the night, somebody finally had the brilliant idea to do a blood culture. And so 2 days, I'm out for at least 2 days. And I wake up to hear you have staph A, and it's from the IV that I had gotten when I was in for the stroke. And the cultures kept coming up positive for about 5 days. And finally, they gave me another antibiotic. And while this is happening, I'm complaining about my back. And they keep saying, lady, you've been in bed for days. Of course, your back's hurting you. And I kept saying, no, I don't have back trouble. There's something, it's not right. Anyway, I started to improve. They let me out after 11 days and sent me home with a PICC line to be on antibiotics for 30 days. And what they failed to tell any of us, and what they did was the antibiotics that was not killing the staph in that 5 days, they took me off. They put the antibiotic that was turning it around, they took me off of it and sent me home with just the original antibiotic. 2.5 weeks later, at this point, it was about 2 weeks, I said to my daughter and husband, I want to go home. And I lived a mile from them. So I went home that day and walked a mile with my walker and went to go upstairs. And the townhouse had 27 steps. And I went to go take a step to go upstairs. And just my leg wasn't coming out of my hip right. So I called them and asked them if they would help me. And they said, no, we're taking you to the hospital. Did check my temperature. I was starting to become hypothermic at this point. I was like borderline and really not feeling sick. And we go to emergency and they do all this blood work. I've got walking around with a PICC line. And they said, your blood work, good news, your blood work looks great. We're going to send you home. And thankfully, my son-in-law said, no, we're not going home. We'd like you to do an MRI. My mother-in-law is not a complainer. There's something wrong. And they said, no, I'm sorry. There's people who are really sick. There's people who are really sick in the hospital that need the MRI, and we're not giving it to her. And he said, well, we're not leaving. And they said, well, we'll call security. And he said, go ahead. We're not going.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's our healthcare system.
Yeah. I mean, really.
You know your body, and when did they do an X-ray or anything when you came in?
No, they finally, I waited, it was probably about 3 hours. I'm feeling sicker. Now I'm kind of like not caring what's happening because I'm getting that sick. And they did an MRI, probably around 1 o'clock in the morning. And about 3 hours later, not the doctor, but they sent a nurse who comes in and said, we got the MRI back. Do you have spinal osteomyelitis, discitis, and you have an abscess with staph in your spinal canal? And everybody's going, I'm hearing this, and I'm not speaking very well. And they're going, what does that mean? And I said, can I go home? Were you going to give me some medicine, go home? And they said, you're not going home for a while. And
yeah, that's so very serious because you can go get paralyzed, paraplegic. Getting an infection in the spinal cord is a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a lot that went on with that. It was actually pretty much a disaster because the orthopedic didn't want to come to go see me. He said, go home, we can't do anything for you. And one other doctor saying, you don't operate on her, she's going to die. You got to get in there and do a surgical debridement, hose her down with antibiotics. And the doctor was like, I'm not touching her with that. at all. Finally, about like 15 hours later, infectious disease comes in, and I don't even at this point know what medicine they gave me. And she's standing over me. She happened to be the head of the department, and she's talking, and she introduced herself, and I said, "I know you." And she said, "You do?" And I said, "Yes, I sold you my home 5 years ago." And she said, "I love that home. I'm still there." And,
Wow.
when you're in the medical system, any kind of sort of relationship you can have helps you. And she actually took it personally and cared for me while I was in. Anyway, I had surgery about 3 o'clock in the morning. They finally convinced the doctor that I wasn't, that it was seated for too long, that I was too sick, that if they didn't go in there and do this procedure, that my chances of making it, considering all that I had wrong with me, and it wasn't going to happen. So I had surgery in the middle of the night, came through pretty good. And so I went in February 7th for the stroke. Now we're in the middle of March, and I didn't get out until April, let's see, like April 5th. And right before they were letting me out, I had to go to rehab for a couple weeks. I had another incident that may have been a TIA while I was in there. So I actually was talking to the doctor, and my speech started getting, I couldn't speak and started to have side effects. So they wheeled me down for that, stayed a little bit longer. And then we had a little trouble getting this special rehab for me. So I was there for a couple of days, and they weren't doing then the blood work that they should have been doing. And the day I was getting released, they did the blood work to release, and they walk in the room and said, "I'm sorry, you're not going home." And they sent in a hematologist and everything. He said, "You're going to have to stay. You don't have any. Your white blood cell count is really low." And my family says, "How low?" And he said, "You've got 5." And I said, "Well, what if I go to 0?" He goes, "Ma'am, you're already at 0." So now I'm in the hospital for another week, and they do the lockdown where they close up the room and you have to come in with the suits. And now they're trying to figure out, well, why I have no white blood cells. And they finally realized that I'm allergic to vancomycin. I was on vancomycin, the gentamicin. Is that the other one? Is that another?
Vanco and Gent, yeah, that's the big guns. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was a third one. So they had me on 3, and they said, "Well, we have to take them off of you." And then they put me on daptomycin, but I had to stay another week. And now I've got another 30 days with the PICC line. Went to rehab and didn't get the PICC line out to the end of April. So, was sent home with a walker. I eventually graduated to a cane, did physical therapy 3 times a week. I really had a rough time. Had to sit and shower and wash my hair. Couldn't walk far. And still was pretty sick, still plant-based, doing all of that. And go for my year exam, and he said, "Look, your back self-fused. This is it. This is your life. You're just going to have to find a way to deal with it, because there's nothing we can do. You can never have hardware." And at this point, because the only antibiotic that actually treated my back and the fact it was seated, I did have a couple of blood cultures that were contaminated, and they said, "We think you have MRSA, because you didn't respond to any of the things you should have for regular staff." And so, they sent me home, and they said, "You got a 50% chance of this coming back. We want you to be on antibiotics for the rest of your life. And if it comes back, we're not sure that you're going to make it, because you've got too many things wrong with you. So your chances of it."
Well, and when you're on immunosuppressive drugs at the same time, that doesn't help the situation, right? Because you're set up for infections and all these other problems that you're having too.
Yeah, you really are. At this point, I'm on 1,200 milligrams of carbidopa levodopa, like to try to keep my symptoms at bay every 3.5 hours or so. So anyway, fast forward, to go back, and now we're at 3 years from about now. And I'd try to walk. Sometimes I get a quarter mile, but it set me back for 4 days. The pain was so bad in my back and the back spasms.
And Mimi, you were living alone at this point?
I am. I was living. I had to move out of my place because I couldn't walk stairs, and I stayed at my daughter and son-in-law's place. They were basically newly married, and they traveled an awful lot. And there was a mother-in-law suite, so I'd see him every couple months. But yes, I was staying alone, and the time, and for a good period of time, I had somebody come in to help me and help care for me and drive me. But yeah, I was pretty much homebound, and and just went and did my little bit of walk and didn't get far. And then one day I was about two blocks from the house, and there's a mailbox, and I stopped to turn around because my back's in pain. And as I'm turning around, I hear, and not, it's more of an intuitive sentence that I heard. At the time I didn't quite realize it all, but for me, I'm a Christian and my faith is important. And to me it was, I often refer to
Uh-oh.
the divine. Yeah, I
Here we
know.
go with faith, so you're gonna get me in trouble here, but
I know
that's
I
safe here
am.
on this podcast. My other one, I might get in
Okay.
trouble, so we're welcome. I encourage that here.
Well, it was my experience, and if I'm going to be honest and tell the truth, to put it in any other way, often I refer, when I write to it on Twitter, I'll say the divine, but for me it was God. And as I'm turning around to go back in utter defeat, because at this point I'm bad enough that my family's saying, I think in a couple of years we're going to have to put you in assisted living, and I'm thinking I'm not going to make it a couple of years. I mean, that's how sick I was. And so as I turn around, I hear, okay, so you can't walk to where you want to walk. How many steps can you do? What can you do? And I stopped and I scanned my body, probably for the first time in, I don't know, 7 years. I stopped for a couple minutes. I thought, oh, I've got 10 steps. And for an athlete to somebody who's does all of this, 10 steps is nothing. I mean, 10 steps isn't even across the room. But that's what I had that I could do. And so I turned back and I walked 10 steps and I walked home, and I didn't think much of it. And the next day I went out and I got to the new marker of the mailbox in 10 steps, and I stopped and I said, can you do 10 more steps? And most of them, every day I did that. And, here I had for a year and a half tried to walk my 2-mile course that sometimes I would double. And I couldn't get past a quarter of a mile on rare occasion. Most of it was just a few blocks. And here I did 10 steps every day. And in a year, I'm at 1 or 2 miles just by doing 10 steps more from the point. About 3 months into my 10 steps, and I now put on some weight because I'm plant-based and I'm not getting any movement. I went across the street from me to a weight loss, thinking I'm on 13 plus medications. I'm still not registering what's happening to me. And I'm thinking, I need a diet drug to get off some weight to make my back better. What's one more drug? So I go to him, and, normally his talk is about an hour. I probably spent 2 hours. I had my bag of all my medications, and he just, thank God he didn't chase me out and say, I can't help. He looks at me and said, I want you to go high protein, but I want you to go 50% fat. And I looked at him and said, I'm trying to lose weight. I've never eaten fat in my life, and you want 50%? How is that even possible? He said, will you trust me? And, at this point, no, but every time I go to a doctor, they're giving me another medication. So what do I have to lose? And we hit it off. So I said, yes, I'll trust you. And he said, and another thing, we're not going to care how much weight you lose, because that's not what matters. He said, you are a sick woman. We're going to get you well. And the weight is going to be a side effect. But we need to get you well. So I went on 50% fat diet, 25% protein, and 25 carbs. Started to, let's just say for the first month or two, I wasn't feeling worse. And I had been feeling worse every month before. Started to feel better. Got a little app. You know, for somebody who doesn't eat fat, it's pretty hard to judge how much fat. So I did rely on that and did rely on keeping my, calorie intake. And, sometimes I missed the mark, and then I noticed I'd missed the mark and I'm getting to 70, 80% fat. And then I started to notice my neuro symptoms getting better. And I said to him, I'm seeing this happen. He goes, stay with it. I eliminated gluten in this process, eliminated nightshades, which affect rheumatoid arthritis. And he started talking to me. He said, there's some stuff about lectins. So I started removing those. And I just kept doing this. I did it for a year and a half, and I never wavered from it. And I started to find I was really starting to feel better. And then I started, which I'm not recommend. I have to say this every time I tell my story. I'm not recommending it. But if I don't have symptoms for heartburn, why am I taking, omeprazole twice a day? Because I don't have heartburn anymore. And so then I started to look at my medication, and then I started to notice, well, every 3.5 hours, I don't need my my Parkinson's medication. Maybe it's 4.5 hours I'm finding I need it. And so now I'm creating a window.
Now, is this
Along with,
doctor? Do you mind saying the doctor's name? Because I think this
no, I
doctor
don't even
deserves.
remember. He wasn't. He actually was a chiropractor.
Oh, yeah. So that's what I mean. Someone just
He
has to be
wasn't even a
involved
doctor.
that says, "Hey, look, let's try something different. Trust me in this," and then you start getting benefits. And I love that in that way of saying, "Okay, let's try. What you're doing is not working clearly, so we got to change
Right.
something." And you change something, you start getting better. Now, were you losing weight, or was that not happening yet?
No, I was losing weight,
Yeah,
and it was slow. And sometimes I'd say to him, and he have to talk me off that cliff. He goes, "Remember, we care about your health. The weight's it's not gonna matter. You're gonna get there, but we have to get you well, because I mean, it's not gonna matter if you're sick. I mean, the weight loss is just not is the least important thing that we have to deal with." And so I
you
just
got to
kept
get the
focusing.
inflammation down and get you feeling better.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
neurologically, it's amazing because Georgia Eid, I just interviewed her, and we had a long discussion about you need cholesterol in your brain. Your brain is making cholesterol. It's not crossing the blood-brain barrier. It's actually making it so that your neurons function better, that you can do
right.
better. And it's pretty remarkable what you're saying here.
Well, so, and just to tell you, not only with the Parkinson's symptoms, I had nighttime dystonia, which is really painful, leg dystonia, occasionally hand, but leg. I had severe restless leg syndrome. I had Parkinson's parasomnia, so I would act out my dreams when that happened. So I've got a lot of things going on top of it, and I find, okay, the restless leg is getting better. I noticed I'm not having the dystonia at night. I also had pretty severe insomnia with it, waking up at 2, and I have to take a half of a pill to try to get me through the rest of the night. And I'm finding I'm not doing this. And then I'm starting to eliminate medications. My arthritis, I don't have pain from that. The Parkinson's, a lot of people don't realize it's painful. You've got rigidity, you have, slowness of movement, which is exhausting. And I'm just staying with it really faithfully, and I'm starting to fool with my medication. And then I say to him, I'm not so sure I have Parkinson's. He said, you may not, let's just stay with it. So I did. And then I started increasing my exercise. I started feeling better with that. My sleep was better. I started to heal. I started to get more fresh air and sun because I was able to move outside more. And I stayed with that high fat and really didn't break it because the results were really phenomenal. And then not this summer, but the summer before, I was out west. And one thing about Parkinson's medication, they really do encourage you to take a lot of responsibility for your medication. You get to play with it and your windows and what's good. There's off symptoms, and so I had a lot of trouble with that. But if that improves, open up. If you can cut out a dose, you've got permission to do that. So that's exactly what I did. I started to taper myself off the medication. And meanwhile, I'm doing this, and I'm not letting anybody know I'm doing this. And I thought, if I taper off and it doesn't work, I just taper up. I mean, right?
Yeah.
So I started to do that, and it took quite a few months, but I went from 1,200 milligrams of carbidopa levodopa plus an extended release pill, 200 milligrams at night to try to get me through the night. And now I'm on no medication.
Wow. Pharma
Yeah.
is not going to like you.
No, they're going to
They're
hate
going
me
to take
because
this episode down, right?
well, you know what? I
That's
was probably
amazing.
about
So you're on no medicines
65,000.
for rheumatoid arthritis, nothing.
No, and that we're talking about those medications were running about 50 some thousand. Started eliminating my asthma medication. The last medication I got rid of was this my Bactrim DS twice a day, 100 milligrams for my back. They said, we want you on this for life. This is going to come back. And I started to fool around with that. And I thought, this is just not good for my gut. I'm feeling good. I'm just going to take the risk and trust myself. So I went to my infectious disease doctor and I said, I'm doing really, he goes, wow, you look great. And I said, I'm doing really good. This is what I'm doing. Of course, they don't want to hear, but I told him anyway. And I said, I want to talk with you about the medication. He goes, absolutely not. You cannot get off of it. Before I could even get my question out, he knew where I was going. He says, no. He said, the risk is too high. And I said, well, I already am off of it. And he said, the first 30 days, you don't have a great chance of, if it comes back, you're going to be doing this all over again. I'm not sure you're going to make it. And I said, I've been off of it for 45. He said, okay, let me know if you have any trouble. You're alive. And that was my last medication in 2022, the end of the summer that I got off of that. I'm on 0 medications.
So you basically played a country song with all the disasters happening, then it went backwards
Yeah.
again, right? And you're
Yes.
feeling great. I mean, so what do you
Yeah.
attribute this to? What do you attribute your recovery to?
Listening to my body. Certainly listening to the call I had, how many steps. That was really an important part of the story. And actually, when I told my orthopedic surgeon, he goes, "Oh my God, that's brilliant. I'm going to start using that." Because I was too sick. I didn't have anything in me. I really had no energy. So just doing that 10 steps and that consistency made all the difference in the world. That then I was like, okay, I need to lose a little bit weight. And then changing my diet, I started to feel better, started to have the energy. 13 plus medications is not doing you any good. Getting off of those now, I'm feeling better.
So what happened with your labs, cholesterol? Were they following your sugar levels and all that kind of stuff? Did you see any big differences?
I did. So my sugar levels have always been good. My cholesterol level went up, my triglycerides went down. So that and the ratio, and I forget which is which. One's 56 and one's 0.5. I think the next one's, the ratio is 0.57. I might have it reversed. I mean, that's pretty good, right?
It's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then that's what we see. I mean, Tro was just fighting with someone yesterday about that. They're like, triglycerides go up on a low carb diet. No, they don't. I have We have
They went to
thousands of
work.
patients we could show you now. I mean, it's very clear
Yeah,
in the literature, and that's just semantics that people just don't understand
right,
physiology.
right.
But to see you physically get better, I mean, gosh, I mean, you just wonder if you never change your diet, what happens to you? Where would you be?
I don't think I would be alive.
Yeah, and your perseverance,
I,
that just shows that 10 steps. I mean, I'd love that too because so many people, can you do one more step? Can you do one more, whatever it is, can you stand up and sit down during the commercials if that's all you can do? Because there's a lot of people who listen that may be, 500 or 600 pounds and they're like, I can't take 10 steps. But I have one of my patients who's done remarkably well and he's an inspiration. He goes, I'm just putting my shoes on every day and I'm going. I'm going. If it's raining, I'm going.
yeah,
I'm going. And he's
you,
had dramatic improvements. And just like what you're doing, that perseverance is so critical.
yeah. And every day, and I just wrote a post about it and I said, because somebody says, okay, so tell me exactly how. And I said, I have told you how. I took 10 steps, but you have to ask yourself, and that's a story. So you have to ask yourself how many steps you have. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 2. When you get that answer, maybe it's 20 steps. Maybe you can do more steps than me. But you need to find that out and you need to do it and you need to look forward and you can't look back.
And how did your faith serve you during all this when you lost
Um,
hope and you go down? I mean, did you get to a point where like, okay, God, why am I going through this? Like Job, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Like one thing after another. It's like, seriously, well, now what? Stroke, rheumatoid, all these things.
Yeah, on that. I think at the time, not that I felt abandoned, but I sort of felt, well, maybe God was busy with somebody else.
Mhm.
And it wasn't after that I realized, oh no, I was being carried. And when I was turning to quit, literally, this is my lot. I'm just going to live with it and just let it take me. That asking me that 10 steps. So that was pretty clear. It's definitely very renewed now. Uh, and certainly has after, like, okay, maybe I wasn't supposed to die, because everything that could have gone wrong, everything that came at me, and I'm still here, and I'm going to be 70 years old this year.
Yeah, I didn't want to
So
ask
it's
you. You
not,
don't look it. People won't like you when
well,
they see
thank you.
the video.
I'm going to, my birthday will be in September, I'll be 70 years old. It's, if I can recover from all of this at my age, how many other people can recover the younger? Because I will tell you, you don't recover as quick when you're older. But I did recover. It's been a long journey. About a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with borderline osteoporosis. We want to put you on medications. You had a big. I said no. I just got off of 13 plus medications. I'm not going on anymore. And then I started weight training, and I was pretty. I put the pictures up. I was pretty skinny and frail when I had getting down with my weight, and I had gotten COVID, so I had lost a little extra more weight than I needed to. But I was like, no, I'm not getting on it. And I started doing research, and I got a trainer because my back was a big issue. And I worked with a trainer for 3 times. I still do. It was the best money I spend. But I'm coming up on 2 years with April. I work 3 times a week faithfully. And honestly, she said she's 75. She's been doing it a while. I trust her. She's a good friend. She said, honestly, I've uh, just never seen anybody like you. I couldn't do a sit up. My back was so bad. And I'll just share it briefly because it's my best exercise. People say, what's your best exercise, weight training story or whatever? And she wanted me to do a sit up and my back wasn't having it. And for about a month, I mean, she just pulled me up whenever we try sit ups. And one day she said, okay, let's just try it. And I got my first sit up and I had a tear in my eye and her eyes welled up. That was a big thing for my back. But I haven't quit. I keep going, uh, and my diet, absolutely. So it was really the 10 steps was the catalyst to healing. Without changing my diet, I wouldn't be here, 10 steps or not. I really was, because I had vitamin B deficiency. I had I can only take methylfolic. I had that. I had anemia. I mean, there just were so many. I mean, some people look at me and say, "Are you for real?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've got 1,000 pages of medical records that show all that I am for real."
Yeah, if your
You know,
medical record showed up in front of you, I'd be like, "Oh no, this is a train wreck of a person. Like, how are we going
oh
to fix this?" And so, the chiropractor started out saying, "Look, let's change this. Let's change this one thing." And how God works and just brings the right people into your life at that time. Because I was getting excited when you said the doctor said, "Don't." And this is what I say a lot. I was laughing. It's like the weight loss is a side effect. We're going to try to get you healthy. We're going to get your insulin down. We're going to try to get
yeah,
your inflammation down. And just a good friend of mine, her daughter's having some mental issues and physical issues and autoimmune issues. And I said, you should look into low carb keto. And she said, oh, that's super inflammatory diet with all those animal stuff. I'm like, oh, my patients must not understand that because their inflammatory markers are getting better and their
yeah,
triglycerides are dropping, their HDL is going, all the stuff we want are going the right way.
yes,
LDL is the wild card. It depends on the person, but it's one of these, it's really hard because, we're trying to do the right thing. And so common knowledge in medicine has been low fat diet, right? High carb, low fat
yes,
diet. And then you start realizing osteoporosis being a problem. And so it's hard. There's a lot of big medical systems that they will not bend. If you're overweight, you're either going to go on a liquid diet. Everyone in California knows what I'm talking about. You're either going on a liquid diet or you're going vegan. That's it. You have no other options. Right.
yeah,
And you go, wow, that's not a very good option. And a lot of these people end up getting diabetes. And then they come to me, and I like that because we can get them better and send them back to their primary and say, look, this patient got
yeah,
better doing the opposite of what
yeah,
you said.
yeah, for sure. And I love the low carb and the carnivore community, and I'm always trying to tout, that's great you lost all this weight, but this eating this way does a whole lot more than just keep you slim. And I'm not diminishing, I'm pretty slim, so I'm not diminishing that that's important and that's good. But you know, I believe it's going to keep a lot of neuro issues at bay. Just the fact that it reversed. I'm no longer diagnosed with Parkinson. I definitely had a form of Parkinsonism. I clearly, since I don't have any of the symptoms, I don't have Parkinson's, and I consider all the other issues I have, since I don't have any symptoms, I don't have those disorders either anymore.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And that's one thing I've noticed in the carnivore community. I see people who are major depression, anxiety, bipolar, and they go, my mood's better, everything's better. And now we have people like Georgia Ede coming out, Chris Palmer, from
Yes.
Harvard, and you look in the data going, wow, this is in, I saw it clinically. Tro and I got attacked when we were having a discussion about it. I'm like, my patients are happier. They're not as stressed. We see that,
Oh,
and not slave to food all the time. And so there's something to that. And I think your case history is amazing, and who knows how much is it that your gut microbiome changed. With there's a lot more data coming out with Parkinson's type syndromes and gut dysbiosis. And
yes.
so we get the gut right with a nutritious healthy diet, and everything seems to follow suit somehow.
Right. Which is another thing that why I'm like, okay, these antibiotics are destroying this. Oh my God, being on these antibiotics, I've got to, heal this way. And I looked. If you've seen some of the pictures, and I didn't take a lot because I didn't want a lot of pictures. There's one of me in the treatment in the bed where I went to physical therapy in my room, and I've got a couple others, and that's all. I wish now that I had more, but I looked. I do have them on my passport. I might post that sometime. And my trainer, I see 3 times a week. She's seen him, and she said, I literally could walk head into you and I wouldn't recognize. I looked 80 years old.
Yeah, we'll have to, I would love that for the show notes. We'll put a picture now and then and throw some of, on Twitter. I see your pictures go, holy cow, you're a beast. You get your workouts in, you're pumped up.
Oh
And,
yeah.
a lot of
I
women in
could,
their 30s and 40s are going to be jealous of you when they see the
yeah.
pictures.
Yeah, I do lateral leg press. I do 265 pounds.
That is
And
amazing, right? It's just
yeah, and the
amazing.
picture me holding the weight like this that's on my profile, I'm holding the kettlebell. Somebody said, um, oh, is that an escalator? I said, no, those are steep stairs, and my trainer has me run up and down them with a 20-pound kettlebell until my legs don't move. And then she has me then do, I don't even remember what the name, then she has me lift the kettlebell for my shoulders. But yeah, and that's in a year and a half of 3 times a week, really slow. I started probably with 1 and 2 pound weights, and you just got to go slow because you don't want to hurt yourself when you're older, and you just got to keep going, and you can't. It's, people say to me, "Why don't you stop?" I'm like, "Why would I stop what made me well? I'm going to lose
Yeah.
muscle mass as I age. I mean, why would I stop any of this?"
Yeah, and you look at, I mean, people don't realize that, but the biggest indicator of longevity is muscle mass. You look at
Yeah,
all these markers and you go, do you have muscle mass? If you, and this is what has concerned me, is with the vegan diet, I see a lot of vegans with no muscle mass, and you go, okay, you're gonna get insulin resistant. There's definitely bad things of not having, sarcopenia, and so
yeah,
doing what you're doing, putting on muscle mass, having a positive attitude, staying, persevering through all the hard times, and then you
right,
get to where you are now, and you have to look back and think,
yeah,
wow, I'm running up and down stairs when I couldn't take 10 steps before.
yeah. Oh, well, I have to pitch myself every day, and I'm really grateful, and it's really clear God wasn't done with me yet. And it's funny because my Twitter account, I had 135 followers in June, and I posted some picture, and all of a sudden it blew up. I freaked out. I'm a very private person, and I was like, I'm going to delete it. And I thought, just don't react, just stop. And I thought about it. I started sharing a little bit more about my health and recovery, and it's just exploded. And I just keep showing up each day, figuring God wants me to tell this story, and I'm going to keep telling it as long as it does some good and people want to listen. And
Yeah, and people egg me on
especially,
to get you on. They're like, you got to get her on. Mark, thank you, appreciate it,
yeah,
because he was like, I'll
yeah,
connect you to. But it's really important to that people know, because for me, the reason I started this podcast was the lack of hope, the lack of
yeah,
hope during the lockdowns. I said we need something that gives hope, saying, look, you can
yeah.
come back from like all your diagnosis code. There's a lot of people who, they hurt their little finger, they can't do anything for the rest of their lives, and so
I
to
know.
go through what you went through and come back, it's absolutely astounding, and having something to look forward to now in life, and helping other
Yeah,
people and doing what you're doing. So God does have a plan when we go through those struggles, and I think that's another message. We all go through hard times, and some people
right,
are going through it now. It's like, okay, take another step, take 10 steps, whatever you can do,
right. Yeah, and keep doing it because I got there quicker than when I tried to do it the other way of pushing and then not and pushing too hard. Yeah. There's really something about those small steps, and I think especially as we age, and that consistency, it changes you on a mental, emotionally, a spiritual level. Also, you build the strength slowly, but it changes you in every area of your life. It really does. It transforms who you are by just doing doing it that way.
Yeah, and I can see your self-confidence in your drive. I could imagine if I knew you a couple years ago, it would be a totally different discussion, right?
I had not. I had no drive. I had no energy. I had no. I think this fall for my 70th, I'm going to do the 300-kilometer St. Francis of Assisi
Oh yeah,
trail. Yeah, and when I was sick, my
amazing.
daughter and son-in-law were there in Spain, and my daughter brought back the shell that you get. That people wear the shell for the journey, and I've always wanted to do that. It was a dream for 30 some years to do this and this trail and this pilgrimage. And she brought me back the shell, and I looked at her and thought, I mean, why would you bring me back something I can't even walk from one end of the house to the other? And it was hanging. She said, just hang it on your lamp, Mom. Maybe it'll inspire you. And I think if I can get the trip all scheduled, I'm going to do it for my 70th.
Are you gonna bring her back a
Eh,
shell?
yes. you know,
That's the way to do it,
and
right?
yeah, and here we're talking 5 years, and it might seem a long time for a lot of people, and maybe it is, but I had a lot to get through, and I've been pretty strong for the last year and a half, 2 years, still building more strength, still working on it, still because of the MRSA and everything, I'm prone to infections, and I've had a little trouble with chronic ear, but I'm going to get that resolved. But that isn't a lot of time because I was sicker for 10 or 12 years. So getting well and 3 to 5 years really is not a long time.
Yeah, it's amazing. Your story is amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing it. Now I have to ask you,
Thank you.
since this is life's best medicine, what's life's best medicine for Mimi? What do you turn to when you're struggling? What gets you through?
Uh-huh.
What motivates you to take those extra steps when you don't want to or
Steps.
when you're hurting? What's life's best medicine for you?
Medicine. Um, I think knowing that God has a purpose for me, that I'm still here when I shouldn't be, and so that I gotta just keep taking 10 more steps.
Awesome stuff. Awesome. You're an inspiration. It's so great to have you on. How do people track you down if they wanna follow you or see what you're doing or
Oh,
get jealous about your
oh,
pictures online?
yeah. Thank you. Mimi K Morgan is my Twitter handle. I'm also on Instagram, and I think that's the same name. I don't do a lot on Instagram, but I'm on Twitter every single day. They can find me there.
I know I'm trying to merge over to Instagram too, but I get stuck on
It's a
Twitter
hard
somehow too.
merge. Yeah, it's a hard.
Because you're there. That's why probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But thank you so much for
Uh,
joining me.
oh, thank you. I
And
appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It was a
you're an
pleasure.
inspiration. And hey, people listening, look, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and take that extra step. Look at that. If your life's not good, if you're struggling, you're going through it, make a change. You can't keep doing the same thing and think it's going to turn out differently, right? That's the definition of
Mm,
insanity. So at some point, we have to say, okay, if I'm on a pure vegan diet, I'm miserable, or if I'm eating all meat and I feel miserable, figure it out. Like, find the people around you, reach out. And, if you're struggling emotionally, spiritually, physically, all those things, reach out to other people. Sometimes that one word or that one encouragement or one line, like, take 10 steps, whatever it might be, just seek, don't give up, don't lose hope. And thank you for listening. And Mimi, thank you. Thank you for joining me.
oh, thank you, Brian.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information. And hopefully this helps you. Have a great day. And thank you for listening. And thank you for your support.